I knew I didn't belong the moment I saw my nameplate. There it was, bold, shiny, and brutal, low-educated fake dad. It sat there mocking me, centered at my seat at my only son's wedding. Everyone else had titles that echoed prestige. Drive-in, Professor Shah, CEO of Meta. And me. I was the shame they hadn't managed to erase yet. The bride's relatives didn't hide their laughter. Some covered their mouths. Most didn't bother. Their amusement echoed through the marble-floored hall like a slap I was expected to pretend hadn't landed. I rose slowly, humiliated. My chest heavy with the weight of 25 years of silent sacrifices now crumbling to dust. I reached for my coat, ready to disappear without a sound, when my son took my hand. He didn't explain. Didn't stand up for me. Just leaned close and whispered, "Dad, let's go home." And in that moment, I understood. He had known all along. He'd seen the insult. And allowed it. That night, sleep never came. The laughter kept repeating in my mind, spinning like a broken record. I kept hearing the bride's father say, "Education matters, you know. Blood alone doesn't make a man a father." They looked at me like I was some antique, a cab-driving relic from a world they'd outgrown. And maybe, just maybe, I didn't belong in that room. But I had never missed a single moment of my son's life. I changed his diapers with grease-stained hands, pulled double shifts to keep him in school, skipped meals so he could eat, borrowed, begged, also he'd never feel the hunger I once did. But in that grand, glittering room, none of it mattered. To them, I was nobody. And my son let them treat me that way. It hadn't always been like this. Once, I was his entire world. When he was 5 and asked why his mother left, I told him gently, she wasn't ready to love the way we deserve. He wrapped his arms around me like I was his whole universe. When he won his scholarship, I cried harder than he did. He promised, "One day I'll look after you, Dad, like you always did for me." But that promise faded. Success erased the past. His new shoes, his new accent, his new job, they rewrote who he was. He stopped saying we and started saying I. The next morning, I sipped my tea in silence and saw the headline on LinkedIn. His company had merged with N Biotech, the bride's father's firm. It hadn't been a wedding. It was a deal. And I was the final blemish they needed erased. That nameplate suddenly made perfect sense. It wasn't just an insult, it was strategy. Strip away his old roots. Shame the ghost of his past. Me. I wasn't a guest. I was a sacrifice. I drove to my garage and opened a drawer I hadn't touched in 12 years. Inside, an old laptop, dusty, but still alive. I plugged it in, turned it on, and opened a folder labeled RA. This was my insurance. I hadn't finished school, but I wasn't a fool. I'd been watching, learning, and quietly documenting every payment made for his education, every rupee borrowed and repaid, every transaction, every name. One file, Project Uncertain, told a deeper story. A trail of donations funneled through a charitable trust registered in my name. Donations used by his company to bloat their research budgets. They thought I wouldn't notice. He'd used my identity to scrub their records clean. But I didn't go to the police. I went to someone who mattered more, his co-founder's assistant. She used to stay late during their internship days, and I used to bring them food. She remembered me. Remembered that I fed her too, when her own family didn't. I said just one thing to her: check your founder's quarterly filings. See where the trust money ends up. She went silent. 4 hours later, I received a message: tomorrow. Press will be watching. Don't miss it. At 10:42 a.m., their company website crashed. Their Twitter disappeared. By 10:59, the co-founder posted his resignation. I refuse to be part of this fraud. At 11:10, every major business outlet published a whistleblower leak. Tax fraud. Fake expenses. Illegal use of charity funds, all tied to a trust in my name. By 12:03 p.m., a news anchor reported. Sources confirm the misuse of charitable funds links back to the groom's father, a retired mechanic and single parent who unknowingly carried legal liability for a fraud he never committed. Their empire crumbled. I didn't smile. I didn't cheer. I just sat by the window and watched the sky grow dark. That evening, he showed up. No cameras. No entourage. Just him. He looked different. Smaller. He stood at the doorway, unsure. "Dad," he said, his voice cracked. I didn't know about the nameplate. That wasn't me. I looked at him, calm. "No," I said. "But your silence was." He had no reply. "I raised a son," I said. "Not a brand. Not a pawn. I gave you everything, even my name. And when they mocked it, you stood with them." He stepped closer. I didn't move. I held up my hand, gentle, final. "You sold your soul for their approval. But I didn't raise you to forget who you are. Now, rebuild your kingdom without what you left behind." I turned away and walked back inside. He didn't follow. They say revenge is loud. Mine wasn't. It was a whisper in a boardroom. A stutter in a press release. A name that once embarrassed, now feared. I was never fake. I was the foundation they tried to hide. And while they laughed, they didn't see the cracks already forming beneath their feet. He called me uneducated. But I gave him his final lesson, without ever raising my voice.